Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of 10-Year Transformation. I'm JD. This week's episode, we're going to take a little bit of a step backward and talk about relationships. But the relationship I want to speak to specifically in this episode is relationship you have with yourself. There's an expression that I use quite a bit and I remind myself of is the quality of your life is in direct proportion to the quality of conversations you have with yourself. And the reason I bring this up is because I think in general, conversations within yourself are holding a lot of people back. I know at times they hold me back because I don't have the best conversations with myself. I act as my own worst critic. And I think that's very natural, and it's probably part of evolution that as a way to avoid being eaten by predators millions of years ago, we kind of act as an evaluator of all our actions to prevent us from maybe doing something quite rash. So I think that's something that's just developed throughout many years. But one of the other parts of it is that you can't escape yourself. The conversation you're having with yourself is a continual soundtrack. So whereas you can walk away from someone that maybe is not treating you well or saying something that you don't like, you really can never escape yourself. You can escape yourself. So this conversation and the quality of that conversation that you're having ultimately becomes almost the soundtrack of your life. So it's a very important conversation, and it's very important to watch what you're saying to yourself. As I said, you act as your harshest critic to yourself. And another aspect that yourself knows is it knows how to hurt you. It knows where your weak points are. So, sometimes if someone's struggling with their weight, this internal critic is calling you fat. If someone is struggling with their career, they're telling you the reason why your career is not what you want it to be is because you're stupid or you did something incorrectly. So this inner voice is acting as this constant, like I said, soundtrack, and more times than not, it's a negative soundtrack. Now, of course, there's the self-help industry is predicated upon to a greater degree, mantras and repeating to yourself, I'm a great person. It's to a point where it's almost trite, and people don't really give it much thought because it's, rah, I'm the best, that type of thing. That only lasts so long because this internal critic returns and tells you that even what you're doing when you're trying to do something like that, maybe that you're stupid for even trying to do that because you can't escape me. It's almost like the devil, so to speak, right there, knowing how to needle you. So it's very important to keep that in check. One of the ways you can work around this is saying kind things to yourself. You try not to speak to yourself the way you wouldn't speak to someone else. If you wouldn't insult someone, if you're not a vindictive, mean person, why are you speaking to yourself like that? And this is something I struggle with quite a bit. I tend to be somewhat of a perfectionist. I do have very high expectations for myself, and I do act as my harshest critic and almost create a soundtrack, and do create a soundtrack quite a bit that is criticizing my motives. That video, you look like a dummy in that video. You're bold, you're whatever. There's reason. No, who's going to watch this? You're that type of thing. That kind of constant critic of pointing out maybe the flaws that I know I'm aware of, but maybe I don't want to be reminded of. Your inner dialogue has this unbelievable ability to come back and kind of needle you with that. So it's something you really have to be very cognizant of. This is by far the most difficult. My relationship with myself is by far the most difficult relationship I have. And as I said, a lot of it has to do with my high expectations, perfectionism, ambition, a lot of different things where, by opening yourself up to even making a video like this, you're opening yourself up to critique by outside forces. People can say, look at this guy, what's he trying to do? What's he about? You write something, someone looks at it and says, what is he writing about? What's he know about this? So there's that outside forces, those outside forces that can be continually evaluating you. And that's difficult enough to deal with. But when it's happening from inside, it's much more difficult to overcome. And I think you have to be your own cheerleader. You can undermine your own progress by doing this, by acting like this. You're undermining your own progress. You should constantly be working on telling yourself why you can accomplish your goals. Why, if you're on a 10-year journey of transformation as I am, why can I accomplish it? What's great about me? What's great about doing this? How terrific am I going to feel once I accomplish this? What's my next 10-year plan going to be after I accomplish this one? Constantly pushing forward. You need to be your own cheerleader. It sounds very rah-rah, it sounds ridiculous, but if you're not your own cheerleader, you cannot expect anyone else to do it for you, because it simply won't last long enough. Nobody that I'm aware of has anyone in their corner that's that solid, that's with you all the time to constantly be pushing you forward. I mean, that's why there's coaches, football coaches. Football coaches not going out, running the play, but they're pointing out to the players what they should be doing, how they could improve it. So you have to coach yourself. Some people hire outside coaches. I, at one point, had a trading coach many years ago. So I have had coaches in my life, but I feel that the coaching relationship within yourself is probably the greatest one that you really need to nurture. Another thing that ends up happening is, if you're not careful of those conversations, you end up in this negative feedback loop. And by that I mean you end up in this continual conversation where you end up rehashing in your head every shortcoming you've ever had. This is very natural. A lot of people suffer from it. I find that I have the tendency to fall into that. And that is something you have to stay away from, because the negativity loop, when you fall into a negativity loop, the world seems to be crashing down around you. And that's very rarely the case. And you start rehashing every shortcoming, every mistake you made, every decision you should have made, and I should have went right when I went left, and so on. But it does, if you allow it to, it will continually just feed upon itself, and it will get worse and worse. So it's something, when you notice it's happening, you have to catch it right away and make a concerted effort to control your thoughts. It's not that easy. For someone who's ever struggled with controlling their thoughts, you understand what I'm talking about. If you've never had a struggle with that, then God bless you. And I wish I was like that. But I struggle to control my thoughts, and I have to make a concerted effort to control my thoughts on a daily basis. As I said, when you fall into these negative feedback loops, it calls into question your ability to accomplish your goals or your motives. And this is, if everyone's on this journey, and everyone's on their own journey, maybe they would call it a 10-year transformation journey, maybe you call it a parenting journey, or an athlete journey, or an accountant journey, or a construction worker journey. It doesn't make a difference what your journey is, but everyone is on a journey. And you have to stay on task, and you have to constantly evaluate yourself and make sure that you're feeding yourself with good things, patting yourself on the back and saying, hey, you know what? I'm making an effort. And you find those little wins and those successes, and you reinforce them in your mind. All these little things will go a long way to reinforcing your relationship and improving your relationship with yourself. As I said, just to rehash, you want to be very mindful of your conversations. Be respectful of your own feelings. Just as you wouldn't intentionally hurt someone else's feelings, you shouldn't be hurting your own feelings. And I do that, and it's something I work toward. It's a very, very big component of my 10-year transformation, is being kind to myself. I have to remind myself every day to be kind to myself. Maybe it sounds strange if you've never suffered with that, but I have to remind myself that A, my motives are correct, and B, I will accomplish my goals, C, there's no quitting, and D, the relationship with yourself is the most important relationship you have, because that sets the tone for all of your other relationships, whether it's with your spouse, your children, your co-workers, people you meet on the street. It sets the tone for all of your other relationships. Also, the last thing I want to just point out is you have to acknowledge that you're not a completed project. By that I mean, very simply, this is a journey that you're on. I'm on a journey, you're on a journey. There is no finish line, per se. you're not a completed project. You're always a work in progress. We're all working toward our own individual goals. So you have to be very conscious of where you stand in relationship to that. Maybe you feel like for whatever reason you're falling a little bit behind. That's okay. As long as you acknowledge it and move forward from that, you'll be fine. But you have to acknowledge that you're not a completed project, that you're a work in progress, and that given the commitment, having the commitment to not give up, you will see progress. Small incremental progress over time, consistently applied, yields results. That's just the reality. So I just want to get back into, as I said, I'm still not making any money from this, but eventually I will. I want to bring out some of the, I want to discuss some of the products that I enjoy and I've been promoting in these videos. One, Purple Carrot. Again, you type your name into the comment box and it will send you a free week of Purple Carrot. I don't make any money from it. I just type your name in, I'll send it to you. It's a good way to introduction to a whole food plant-based lifestyle. Since I've started eating whole food plant-based, I'm down about 35 pounds. This is a combination of exercise and nutrition, and it's yielded 35 pounds in results. So, the proof is in the pudding. Second product or organization I like to promote is Territorio de Zagueyetas. That's that dog rescue in Costa Rica that, I will donate $1 for every like I get. Still sticking by that. New thing that I like to promote, it's called Blinklist. I heard it on Rich Roll podcast and it really intrigued me because I'm busy. A lot of times I'm driving, so I don't have opportunities to read. I'm always reading multiple books and whatnot.